Who's ready for an adventure? Mosquitoes were pretty reasonable last night, but for some reason I just couldn't sleep very well. So I'm up now earlier than I have been so far on this trip. Figured, you know what, I might as well get out there, see if I can catch some early morning walleye. It's another calm, beautiful morning. Just had a nice morning paddle, another beautiful morning here in Temagami. I caught a couple of perch and I brought those back for breakfast. I am also boiling up a pot of water to cook those crayfish in, and it's just come to a boil. I'm going to go ahead and add my crayfish here. Just a little collection of them I caught last night. So those will go right in there. And they will soon turn from a brown to a nice red. I'll leave those for a few minutes. They won't take long to cook at all, and then they should be ready to eat. And I've just got my two perch here as well. Toss in a few cattails and we're good to go. These crayfish have now had a few minutes to cook, and they've turned a nice red color. Let me just show you there. There you go. So they were a brown, a dull brown to start, and now they're a nice rosy red. So what I do is I'll break the tail off here. It's a little bit of a process, but you crack it open there. You peel it off. Getting the shell off there, exposing the tail meat inside. There you go, it's like a little shrimp. So here's the first little crayfish tail. And it's quite good. I'm going to keep those on top of the fire to keep them warm. I'll just work my way through these. Nice little breakfast seafood. And these ones are a little bit small for the claws to be of much use to me. If you get nice big juicy ones though, you can eat the claws as well. So I gathered these last night. You can catch them during the day, but they seem to be more active in the evening. If you've got a flashlight, it's easy to go around rocky areas and Get a nice little collection of them. You can use them for bait too, but I've never really had success using crayfish for bait. I have had success eating them though. Hence the decision to eat them. I still have those pike left, 4 pike that I caught yesterday. So I'm going to be eating well today. It's going to be a good day. In order to get the crayfish and minnows out this morning, I cut a trap door in this pop bottle minnow trap, and now I've closed it again with a little more snare wire. So with any luck, that will serve as a useful access route that will not allow minnows to escape. I've just finished cleaning these 2 pike from yesterday. These are the 2 small ones that I caught. And they died in the afternoon, or perhaps late morning, and were out in the heat and the sun in shallow water. And as I clean them, I noticed the texture of the meat isn't quite right, and the smell isn't quite right. So I'm not too sure about these. If this were back at home, these would probably be going in the garbage. But since I'm out here, I'm going to cook the heck out of them and hope that I don't get sick. We'll see how it goes. While I wait for my questionable fish to cook, I'm going to start on something that I've been wanting to do for a while now, and that is make a bow drill friction fire. And it consists of 4 major components. There's the bow, the spindle, the handpiece, and the fireboard. Right here I have a nice dry, dead piece of balsam fir. I've had success with cedar. It works quite well. Spruce works not as well, but it works. But my personal favorite is definitely balsam fir. So to get started, I'm going to make myself a fireboard and a spindle, both out of the same piece of balsam fir. So here we have the shape of the fireboard. It's flattened on 2 sides, and I've taken the rounded edge off as well. It's about a little more than 1 inch thick. Could be a little thinner, but this should work, so I'm going to leave it at that. The next step is the spindle, and I'm just going to make that right above here, and save some space in case I mess up. There's plenty more wood to work with. Now you want the wood to be quite dry, but at a certain point it becomes too dry. So this wood has started to crack, and it's got a few ant holes in it as well. So if it holds together, it should be great, but there is the possibility that it will break while I'm trying to use it. So here is my roughly shaped spindle. I'm still going to reduce some wood with my knife so that it's a little bit thinner. When it's done, this end will be rounded off and this end will be sharpened to a point. The purpose of that, I want to reduce friction at the top. This is where the spindle and the handpiece will meet. I don't want friction up here. So a point will have less surface area, less friction, and it will hopefully spin cleanly. At the bottom, it's going to be rounded where it meets the fireboard. I do want to have friction here, so I want a greater surface area, more friction, and this is where the friction will create the heat, which creates the fuel and the ember for the fire. So I'm just going to do a little bit more work reducing this. I've left it fairly long, perhaps the length of my shin. I like a long spindle. I just find it easier to apply downward force. As well, it gets shorter as you use it, and a short spindle is really difficult to work with, I find. I think the spindle's all set to go now. I've rounded it off and reduced the diameter a little bit. I've rounded one end at the bottom, more or less. The friction will do the rest. And I've sharpened the top. So now this is good to make a friction fire. Now the top will wear down with use, so it will need periodic sharpening. But this should be good to go for now. So now we have our spindle and our fireboard, both made of balsam fir, same piece. When time comes, spindle is going to sit on top of the fireboard like this and rotate. So we're done with that piece of balsam fir for now. The next step is going to be making the bow and the handpiece. But before I do that, I'm going to try that fish and see if it's edible. So let's go ahead and give this fish a try. Well, I think it's edible. Not the best fish I've ever tasted, but I anticipate that I'll be able to keep it down. So, I'm going to eat it. You can eat as much of it as possible, and if I finish this one, I'll start on the second pike and get it out of the way. Because I hate to waste food normally, and in a situation like this, it's if you can't eat it, you've got to eat it. Waste not, want not. Ugh. Ugh. Not a good bite. Doesn't help that I overcooked it either. I mean, it probably does in terms of killing any bacteria, but it does not enhance the flavor. It's like eating dry, burnt, ashy, rotting pike, essentially. That's the closest thing that I could think of to compare it to. I think it does a pretty accurate description. That's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. Staying alive, staying alive. There you have it. Managed to eat both of those fish. Second one was a little less tainted than the first, which was nice. So now I don't have to worry about those going bad. Haven't decided what I'm going to do for dinner yet. I might just have a meatless dinner, go with the old rhizomes and cattail shoots. We'll see. Haven't decided. Anyways, so lunch is done. Now it's time to get back to work. I'm going to make the hand piece and the bow for the bow drill fire kit. The next item for a bow drill friction fire kit is going to be the handpiece. Now my personal favorite handpiece of all time is a rock that I found on the railroad tracks. Fits my palm nicely and it has a perfect hemispherical indent on one side. You're not normally going to be so lucky as to find that. Basically you just need something that's stronger, denser than your spindle. So you can use hardwood, you can use bone, you can use rock, you can use, I've heard shells work. Hardwood is something that's readily available, so that's what I'm going to use today. So I have here a piece of birch that was intended for my campfire, but it's got a new purpose now. So I'm going to carve a divot into one side of this, and that will act as the divot that my spindle sits in at the sharpened end at the top. So that is a start right there, and that'll get worked in and smoothed out by the point of the spindle once I get working on it. The last item on the list is the bow itself. Now for this you want a stick that is fairly rigid and strong. It can't be something that's going to snap when it's under pressure. It can be green or it can be dead wood. There's no specific type of wood that it needs to be, it just needs to meet those parameters. And I like to have something that is about as rigid, just rigid enough that it has little to no bend. That way you are minimizing weight. You don't want a really heavy bow because then you tire your arm out. So just find something that'll fit those specifications. I found something here. It was in my burn pile. A little balsam fir, and it's got a nice little curve to it. I like to have that. You'll see why in a second. So I'm going to cut this off and see if that will work for my bow. So here we have it. Now that's probably a little more bend than I normally want, but I think it will work. It seems fairly rigid. I normally like a bow with no bend, but a little bit of bend can be made to work. So I'll get a string on there and see if this will work for me. So here's the bow. I've cut a notch out the end to fit the string onto. There's already a natural notch at this end. So this is how it looks. The string is slack when it's not strung. And when you incorporate the spindle, give it a little twist there. Now the string is tight. Now the exact tension of the string takes a little bit of finagling. I'll probably have to play around with it a little bit, loosen it here, tighten it there, and get it to be just right in order for it to work. But that's all part of the process. We now have all of the pieces that we need. We've got our bow, our balsam fir spindle, balsam fir fireboard, and hardwood handpiece. So I have all my pieces here, and we'll see how this kit works. You can already tell I'm going to need to tighten the string before too long. So the way I'm doing this, I'm right-handed, so my right hand is going to grab the bow, grabbing it at the little arched bit, and that keeps my fingers away from the string, prevents my knuckles from rubbing against the string or against the spindle. The handpiece is in my left hand, and I'm bracing my wrist against my shin. That's going to keep things a lot more stable, save me a lot of energy. I'm going to be positioning myself over top of the spindle so that I can exert downward force on it. I need to go really slowly at the start to work in the notch, and also the notch on the handpiece is not quite worked in yet either, so this is going to be a slow process to start. And once it warms up, then we can go a little faster. So there you go. When the string slips on the spindle like that, you can tell you need to stop and go ahead and tighten it. No point continuing, as that will only waste energy. So it just needs a small tightening, definitely find the bow drill is a process where everything needs to be just right before you can succeed. A lot of small adjustments, just tweaking here and there. Once you get it right, things should just click and you'll get success. Takes a while to get there sometimes, but if you persist, then it's worth it in the end. So now the string is tighter, and that's why I normally use green wood for a bow. So I'm going to go cut down something that's green and not going to snap on me like a piece of crap. And like I said, it's all about getting all the pieces in place at the right time. That is clearly not a piece in place, so pretty major adjustment needs to be made there, but that's okay. I'll make the adjustment and I'll come back to it with a better bow. I've now made myself a new bow, and I've also narrowed my handpiece a little bit. I just found it was a little bit wide and unwieldy to grip. So I originally started with my bow holding it like this. I've now switched like that, so that the kink is at the other end. The reason being, I find that when my hand is angled like this and pushing, it's an unnatural motion and I tire easily. I would rather have it straighter, a little bit of an angle but relatively straight, and that prevents me from fatiguing too much. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a try now, see if this bow holds up any better. Again, starting slow. And I'm just working in that notch. I'm not trying to start a fire here. I am getting smoke now though, which is a good sign. And I'm going to stop there. So the notch on the fireboard and the bottom of the spindle have begun to marry. So the two shapes are fitting together. So at this point it's time for me to start thinking about actually making a fire. So I'm going to stop here, gather my materials for a tinder bundle, lay my fire, and complete the next steps. I'm just foraging for tinder right now. These ferns are a personal favorite of mine. They die and stay standing and dry out nicely. So if I can find a good bunch of these, I don't really even need anything else. I'll just use these ferns alone. But there are all sorts of things that you can use. Basically anything that is going to be dry and fine and flammable. You want to get enough that you can make a softball size bundle. So I have my tinder bundle here, made of those dead ferns. I've also crushed and torn up a little bit of birch bark and put that in there. It's shaped like a bird's nest. And once I get an ember, it's going to go right here in the middle. I'll fold the nest up around it so that it's a full ball with the ember in the middle. And then I'll blow air through it, and hopefully the flame will spread and the tinder bundle will catch fire. Once we get to that point, I'll transfer it over to my pre-made fire right here. There's a spot in there ready to accept it. And if all goes as planned, the whole fire will go up at that point. There's one last alteration that needs to be made to the fireboard before I can try to collect the sawdust and get an ember. And that is, I'm going to cut a notch right in here. And that will allow sawdust to collect in the notch. It will also allow oxygen to enter the system. If you're familiar with the fire triangle, we need fuel, oxygen, and a source of ignition in order to get fire. So I'm just going to make 2 parallel cuts here. So there we go. It's a little off center, but should work still. And you give a little twist, crack it out. Out it comes, and we have a notch. And I'm going to widen that just a little bit here. Make it a little more centered as well. Doesn't need to be perfect, but it'll help to have a slightly larger notch once the time comes. It allows more sawdust to collect, allows more oxygen to enter the system, and it also makes it easier to separate the ember from the fireboard once it has been created. Alright, so that should be good now. One last piece going into place, a little piece of bark here called the welcome mat. That goes underneath the notch like so, and that will collect the sawdust and allow me to easily transfer it into my tinder bundle. So the first thing I need to do is build up sawdust in my notch. That'll take a little while here, so I don't need to rush things. I can take my time. And generally speaking, I find it's not about how quickly you go. If you want to do more work, then increase the amount of downward pressure that you're applying. I'm not gonna lie, I'm tired. It's the heat of the day. Normally I'd be napping right now. So I anticipate that I will take a break once I have enough fuel built up. This is also the first time I've done this in a while. My energy stores were a little higher then. So I'm making progress here slowly. You know what I will do though? Let's take a second to push this fuel into the notch. Make my job a little easier. Take a sip of water. And check to make sure everything's still in place. Tinder bundle, fire is still good to go. My handpiece is looking good. My spindle is still sharp at the top. And get ready to do one last push. So I'm leaning down on my left hand to get some good downward pressure on the handpiece. And now the rope is slipping. So I'm going to tighten it just a little bit. Which pains me because I'm oh so close right now. But I'm also tired. So it gives me a chance to regain a little more energy. The notch is full of sawdust. So now I just need to get the final push to ignite it. want to stress how different this is doing it in a controlled setting in your backyard or at a cottage or inside versus doing it outside in a survival setting. I've been out here for a month now, and my energy is a lot lower. You can feel the spindle is a little bit worn in, so we're going to do a little more troubleshooting here. So the groove there is a little glossy. The spindle is back out there. Spindle is a bit glossy as well. So those need to be roughed up a bit. What I'm going to do is take a second and I'm going to find some sand. So what I've done here is I've put a little bit of that attempt at a clay wheel, crumbled it up and put it in the groove there. And once I grind the spindle into that, it should make it gritty and increase the amount of friction between the two pieces, in theory. So let's give that a try, shall we? Part of me that's most tired is my left arm from applying downward pressure. Though I will say that this is not the best bow with the heavy end away from me. I'm going to try changing that up, see if that's better or worse. No. Now what's happened here is the spindle has worn out the front of the groove, which is a problem that I thought I might have because it's a fairly narrow fireboard. So what I need to do is cut a new notch. Fortunately, I can keep the fuel. We're going to do that. I'm so close here. Close does not put fire on the table. Alright, so I'm going to go back to the drawing board a little bit here, and I'll come back when I have a new notch ready to go. I've made a number of adjustments to my friction fire kit. The spindle has been narrowed and sharpened at the top. I figured making it narrower might make it a little more efficient. The bow seems to be at a good level of tightness. I cut a new hole, or a new notch in the fireboard, and I have filled it with the sawdust from the previous notch. I've also tossed in a little bit of the spacer underneath the fire dust there so that I don't have to accumulate any more sawdust. Basically, it's as full as it needs to be, and it's ready to start with the ember. And my handpiece is ready to go. I made a little bit of room there. The handpiece and the top of the spindle were starting to marry a little bit, so like I said, I sharpened the spindle and I smoothed out the handpiece a little bit. I also had a rather substantial nap to try to recover some energy that I spent this afternoon trying to get that ember. So this is going to be my last push. It's safe to say that if I can't get it here, it's just not happening today. And there you have it. So I have my ember now. Don't need to rush. I can let that grow for a second. And then I need to transfer it to my Tinder Bundle. I need to separate it from the fireboard very carefully. I have my Tinder Bundle made up here as a nest. Ember is burning away, or smoldering away I should say. I just want to nurse that, feed it oxygen, let it grow. Not a huge rush. Better to take my time at this point. Goes transferring into the Tinder Bundle and keep it all together. There you have it. Wasn't easy, wasn't quick, but today I got the job done. And that is the important thing. Not how quickly it's done, but that it gets done. And I have to say, I think that is the hardest I've ever worked to get an ember and to get it into a fire. And I am pleased with that. Quite pleased. There you have the bow drill friction fire. So as I mentioned there, this was a lot more difficult to do out here in a low energy situation than it was when I was practicing at home. So that is why it's crucial that you continue practicing even when you think you have something mastered. Throw yourself a few curveballs. Try it when you're tired. Try it when it's raining. Try it when it's windy. So that was a successful effort. I'm not going to let this fire go to waste. So I'm going to get a pot of water boiling and make some tea with it. While we wait for this water to boil, I just want to make a couple more notes on the bow drill friction fire effort that I had today. That was basically an all afternoon effort, and aside from the issues that I was talking about, the personal issues as in fatigue, lack of practice, I noticed the kit wasn't as good as I might have liked. For example, the bow wasn't quite the right shape, so I was holding my hand at an awkward angle, and that fatigued me. The hand piece, it was decent, but I noticed that there was some friction starting to happen at the top of the spindle, between the hand piece and the spindle. So just minor things. Once you get more practiced, once you've got your kit established, then you start to get more and more efficient at it. You get a kit that you like. You start to work out your own personal kinks, and you get more experience, more practice. A lot of it is building up the musculature and the endurance to perform that action. So the two main sources of fatigue are pushing down with the left arm, and then the right arm giving the sawing action. So these things come with time, they come with practice, and it's not something that happens right away. There's another experiment that I'm going to do. I've gathered a couple types of mushrooms or fungi from birch trees in the area. One is this black and orange fungus. I want to say it's called chaga. And then you have this white bracket fungus. Now each of these can be used to prolong an ember. So I'm going to experiment with that today, and then you can use it to restart the fire at a later time when you need it. This one has got an ember here though, so I'm going to put this off to the side. And now I cut these off a tree a week or two ago, probably a couple weeks ago now, so they've had a little while to dry by the fireplace. Okay. So these both have an ember going now. Don't want them to burn, I just want them to smolder. So that is hot. So I'm going to put these over here. 7:08 is the time lit. We'll see how long the fire lasts, and we'll see how long each of them lasts. The way I looked it up, this fungus here is called Tinder polypore. So the Tinder name tells you right away that it's been used for this. And I'm not 100% sure. I believe this is birch hypoxylon. That was the only thing that I could find that was comparable in description to this particular fungus. Today's tea is clover. Now, some of these flowers have had about a week to dry. Others were gathered fresh today. Now, this is not one that I've tried before, so I'm interested to see how it'll go. So my clover tea has been steeping for a little while now, about 15 minutes. So I'm going to give it a try. That's an interesting one. First time I've tried this. It's definitely got a stronger, more distinct taste than most of the teas that I've tried so far. It's a little bit sweet. Very good. So today is June 30th, marks the halfway point of my trip so far. And I'm pretty happy with how things have gone so far. Definitely good days and bad, but I feel like I'm really getting the hang of it. I'm getting into a rhythm. I haven't been really hungry in a while, although hunger is always with me. My days are ruled by the acquisition of food. My nights are ruled by trying to avoid becoming food for the mosquitoes. So it's a difficult lifestyle, but like I said, I feel like I'm getting the hang of it and getting into a rhythm, and I'm happy with things and how they're going so far. It's really nice being out here. Like I said, good days and bad, but just the amount of beauty that I see is it makes it all worthwhile. It makes it worth sticking out the difficult periods. It's a lot of sunrise and sunset when the day is calm. See some really beautiful things, some nice wildlife spotting as well. So it's been quite the experience so far. I'm glad I'm out here, and I'm looking forward to another, hopefully, successful month in the bush. That friction fire really took a lot out of me. That's the longest effort and most difficult ember that I have ever succeeded in getting. And I have to say I'm quite pleased with it. The benefit of the bow drill friction fire over the hand drill is that you are able to generate more force. So I was tired, but I was still able to generate the force needed to get the fire. With a hand drill, I don't think that could have been done. And also, I couldn't keep going for that long because it wears down your hands. I thought about doing the hand drill today, but I have some cuts on my hands that I want to heal. So that's another benefit of the bow drill friction fire. The downside, as we saw with the bow breaking, with the spindle slipping out of the notch, with the top of the spindle becoming rounded off, with the greater number of variables, there are a greater number of variables that need to be in the right place in order for the entire unit to succeed. It's like a chain. If there's a weak link, then the chain will break. So you need to have all the links in place, everything working properly in order to have success. It took me longer to do so, but I was able to do so, and I'm quite happy with the result. Don't you just love mosquitoes? Don't you just love them? All my friends are here. It's a party. This is the Tinder polypore. Still got an ember 3 hours later. This is the chaga, or whatever it's called. That's still got an ember. The Chaga is looking stronger at this point. Tinder polypores. It's hollowed out to a shell basically. I'll turn my light on so you can see that. There you go. It's basically hollowed out inside. That's 3 hours of work. And these are about baseball-sized fungi, I would say. Chaga seems to be going stronger. Chaga was probably smaller to start, actually. Anyways, the fire is now truly out. No, a bit of heat. No embers left though. So that's the fungi fire preservation experiment thus far.